Metallica is one of the most popular heavy metal bands of all time, formed by vocalist and guitarist James Hetfield and drummer Lars Ulrich back in 1981, and the band is still going to this day. At some point in the early 2000s, the band began work on a video game with visuals inspired by Mad Max and gameplay inspired by Twisted Metal. Created by Black Label Games and developed by Vivendi Universal Games, the game is set in a wasteland setting where you drive different modified vehicles with guns shooting at enemies, as well as customizable characters, possibly playing as a band members or playing against the band members. The trailer for the game was released during Metallica's album Saint Anger in 2003, and the game was set to be released in 2005 on the PlayStation 2, the Xbox, and PC. However, the game canceled production at some point in 2004, and the band went quiet about the game until 6 years later in 2010 when James Hetfield confirmed that the game was canceled. Concept art for the game was later released by Hetfield, made by Callum Alexander Watt, showing what the characters would have looked like. In October of 2016, a YouTuber named PTOP Online, who was dedicated to posting prototypes and unreleased footage of games, posted gameplay footage onto their channel and shared a lot of information about the game. 2 years later, on July 29, 2018, the same channel posted more gameplay showing a car battle mission from the game. The creator of the channel also shared some screenshots of the game on Twitter, including a screenshot of a rhino in the game for some reason. According to the OP, the game has 4 or 5 builds that are known to exist, and even claims to have a build of the game on the Xbox. However, to this day, none of the builds of the game have ever been released online. Foodfight is an animated comedy film produced by Threshold Entertainment and is very notorious for being a very bad film. The first origin of Foodfight began all the way back in 1997 when creators Lawrence Kasanoff and Joshua Wexler created the concept for Foodfight, and the film began production in 2000. However, Kasanoff was not experienced in directing a film before, and due to this, Kasanoff kept missing deadlines for the film. In 2004, Kasanoff claimed the hard drives containing the film were stolen and the film had to start from scratch. It's speculated that this was entirely made up and was actually deleted by Kasanoff himself to make excuses to miss deadlines and to possibly include motion capture into the film. Because of this, the film wouldn't be released until May 3rd, 2012, 12 years since production of the film started, and it's considered to be one of the worst movies of all time. Budget for the film was between $45 and $65 million and only made $120,000 back. During this time, however, development of a game based on the movie began by Midway Games West in 2001, but the only existence of this was concept art showing that Dex, the main character, was going to be human instead of a dog character. In 2004, Midway Games West eventually passed the game to a small game studio named Cat Daddy Games. The game is planned to be released in 2006 on the PlayStation 2, GameCube, Game Boy Advance, and the Wii. However, it was pushed back to 2007, and the game was eventually cancelled in 2008 altogether. The whole time this game was in production, no announcement was ever made about this. The only existence of this game online was B-roll footage from E3 2006 showing a demo of the game playing in the background. The footage was released on PlanetQuake4.net and was eventually mirrored to YouTube. The game fell into obscurity until 2021 when a YouTube channel named The Jake Archive re-uploaded the B-roll footage but shortened it to only show the Foodfight game. The video got a decent amount of attention, enough for people to genuinely question what in the world happened to this game. That question would finally be answered when Lost Media Wiki user Ziggy Cashmere spoke to Cat Daddy Games co-founder Harley Howe. While Ziggy didn't have the game files itself, it was able to provide assets used for the game like sound effects, music, models, cutscenes, gameplay footage, screenshots, and even references for models and design documents. Thanks to these files uploaded by Ziggy, we now know a lot more about this game. The game was going to include both Dex Dog Detective and Daredevil Dan as playable characters, and there is going to supposedly be over 15 levels filled with platforming and flying. However, there isn't any known builds of this game, so it's very unlikely that we'll ever get to see the full game. Yeah Beebiss 1 is probably one of the most mysterious games in the Lost Media community. The mystery starts all the way back in June 1989 when a New York mail order company named Play It Again made an issue of video games and computer entertainment where the name Yeah Beebiss 1 appears. The name continues to appear in different issues from the same company in July, August, until September when it stops appearing. As soon as Yeah Beebiss 1 stops showing up in Play It Again's issues, another mail order company named Funko starts advertising the game in October. However, this time the game has been shortened to Yeah Beebiss 1 and is incorrectly alphabetized between W and X. The game continues to appear in different issues from November until December, and the game is never mentioned again. There have been multiple theories on the existence of this game, but a user on the Lost Media Wiki named That Gaming Asshole does a pretty good job debunking most of the theories, so I'll just rephrase what they said. The first theory is the copyright trap, where the game isn't actually a game at all, but intended to serve as evidence in case another company steals the list. However, this theory doesn't hold up because there's nothing to copyright. None of the companies don't own the games listed, and it wouldn't make sense if both companies used the same name for a copyright trap. However, Lost Media Wiki user StinCircleActic contacted one of the founders of Play It Again, Neo Levine, and formed an interview. Levine claimed that the company would oftenly put in fake listings to catch people copying them. However, it's unknown if Yeah Beebiss 1 was a copyright trap or not. The second theory is that the name is an inside joke. The theory is self-explanatory, but it doesn't make sense because both Funko and Play It Again have no affiliation with each other, so it wouldn't make sense if they both have the same inside joke. The third theory is that the game is a badly translated game called... The game is called Rai Rai Kyonchi's Baby Kyonchi no Amida Daiboken? I'm so sorry. The game is based on a horror comedy Taiwanese movie called Hello Dracula. The movie is about a hopping vampire terrorizing a city and ghostly warriors attempting to capture this vampire? What? The reason people think this game is Yeah Beebiss 1 is because the Rai Rai in the title is similar to Yeah, and the baby could have been translated into Beebiss. However, where the number comes in is unknown to me, but it could be that the 1 in the title is stating that it's the first part of the series, but that's just a guess. The last theory is from OP and believes the game is a reference to Yo Noid. Noid is the mascot for Pizza Hut that was created in 1986 but was discontinued in 2021. However, Yo Noid was released in Japan in 1990 even though the listings came out in late 1989, but it's possible that some of the names in the listings could have been early names for upcoming games. A translator could have possibly mistaken the Yo for Yeah, but how Noid translates to Beebiss and why there's two Yas is unknown to me. To this day, it's still unknown if this game even exists at all, but let me know down in the comments what you think. Nintendo is one of the biggest gaming companies in the world, known for famous characters like Mario, Kirby, Link, and way more. The company was first founded all the way back in the late 1800s as a playing card company. The company eventually transitioned into producing toys in the 1960s and later started making video games in the 1970s. Nintendo began getting traction in the 80s after releasing the arcade game Donkey Kong, followed by the Nintendo Entertainment System and Super Mario Bros. Since then, Nintendo continues to release video games and has garnered a huge fan base. However, not every video game Nintendo makes is ever released, and there is quite a bit. This game is just one of the others that I'll be talking about today, so expect more Nintendo games later on. From 1989 to 2001, Nintendo hosted an annual video game event called Space World. Space World was a video game trade show where they would announce new games, accessories, and new consoles. At Space World 2000, a game was previewed called Super Mario 128. However, this wasn't the first mention of this name being used. The name can be traced all the way back to January 1997 when Nintendo planned to make a sequel to Super Mario 64, but was cancelled and was reused for this game. The game would have supposedly been a co-op single-player game featuring Mario and Luigi with sphere walking, which was later used in Super Mario Galaxy. The tech demo shown at Space World's only purpose was to test the limitations of the GameCube and to show the physics engine. Throughout the years, Shigeru Miyamoto would continue to talk about the game and what the game would include, like a new character by your side, possibly Yoshi. When E3 was coming in 2004, it was believed that Nintendo would release the game, however, that never happened. The game began to fall into obscurity with comments on the game every now and then, until Miyamoto gave a speech at GDC in 2007 where he says the purpose of Super Mario 128 was to demonstrate the limitations of the GameCube and that multiple of the techniques used in that game was put into other games like Metroid Prime, Super Mario Galaxy, Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, and Pikmin. It's unknown whether Super Mario 128 was ever in development to become a game. but it's very unlikely that this tech demo will ever see the light of day. Stranger Things is a popular Netflix show that first started all the way back in 2016 and is still going to this day. The show is set in the 80s inside a small town called Hawkins, where an experimentation facility opens a gateway to an alternate dimension called the Upside Down. The show has received numerous awards because of its atmosphere, acting, writing, and way more. On June 13th, 2018, a video game company named Telltale announced on Twitter that they are developing a game based on Stranger Things. Telltale is mostly popular for its Walking Dead games, The Wolf Among Us, Minecraft Story Mode, and more. The plot of the Stranger Things game was going to be set between Season 2 and 3. According to a former Telltale's employee, they described the story as the boys' last chance to be kids again before they are brought into high school and their adult life begins. But suddenly, 3 months after development of the game was announced, Telltale's laid off over 250 employees and filed for bankruptcy. This meant that current projects in the works like the Stranger Things game, Season 2 of The Wolf Among Us, and a sequel to a Game of Thrones game were cancelled. In October 2018, another gaming company named Skybound Games took over development of The Walking Dead: The Final Season. Around the same time, another company named LCG Entertainment acquired rights to Telltale and announced they would bring back old titles from Telltale. However, Stranger Things was never taken over and was officially cancelled. Shortly after Telltale announced their bankruptcy, a Reddit user named Random Guy on the Reddit posted leaks of the game on r/games, including concept art. The gameplay would have played just like other Telltale games, where the player is given various choices on what to say or do, and depending on what you do will impact the story. 2 years later, on October 27th, 2020, the entire soundtrack was uploaded onto YouTube by Antimo and Wells, the same people who created the soundtrack. However, this is all that has come out from this game with no new updates on the game, but we can hope that the new company in charge of Telltale eventually revives this project and finishes it. Yet again, Nintendo comes back on the list, and this won't be the last time you'll be seeing them. Well, actually, it may or may not be Nintendo's work, I don't know. The first known appearance of this image was on August 11th, 2000, when IGN posted the picture onto their website. The screenshot shows what looks like a purple Yoshi in third person, walking in the forest with his tongue out, ready to eat the creatures on the side. IGN speculated that the image may be for the Game Boy Advance because of the resolution. The image was shared around a little bit, but fell into obscurity for over 10 years until June 18th, 2014, when popular lost media YouTuber LSupersonic uploaded a blog talking about the image after discovering it on a website containing Space World 2000 images. From now on, I will shorten LSupersonic name to just LSSQ to make it easier for me. LSSQ believes the game turned into Yoshi Topsy-Turvy, released in 2004 on the Game Boy Advance. However, the graphics don't match up with the screenshot. In 2018, LSSQ did further digging on the image and found a couple forum posts talking about the image. On February 4th, 2019, Super Mario 128 Central analyzed the image further and noted the resolution was 240 by 160, the same resolution as the Game Boy Advance. They also noted that a purple Yoshi appears in Super Mario Sunshine that was released in 2002. However, the Yoshi in this game is wearing brown shoes instead of green shoes, and the saddle is too long compared to the image. They point out that the graphics look too good for the Game Boy Advance. They came to the conclusion that the screenshot was most likely fake. However, it doesn't seem likely that IGN would post a fake screenshot, even for hype or anything like that. If you want a deeper dive into this, make sure to check out LSSQ's video on the image. Look, just hear me out here, alright? I promise you guys, this is the last Nintendo game we'll talk about in this video. From 1988, Nintendo released a magazine called Nintendo Power 6 times a year until 1991, when they began releasing once a month before ending altogether in December of 2012. However, an issue released in September of 2000 caught people's attention. In the Nintendo Power Online section, there's an entry called Mamma Mia, It's Waluigi. I won't read the whole entry, but to summarize it, Waluigi is promoting the new game at the time, Mario Tennis, for the N64, including a website named Waluigi.com, and briefly mentions a game called Waluigi's Toenail Clipping Party for one of his online games. According to people who played the game, all the game is that you clip Waluigi's toenails and catch the clippings into a jar. That's it. However, despite claims of people playing it, a lot of people believe the game never existed and was a joke from Nintendo. However, Last MediaWiki user Media Monster found evidence that proves the game indeed did exist. Media Monster put in the link mariotennis.com/toenails_coming.swf into the Wayback Machine, and an SWF file began to download. Unfortunately, the SWF file is a preview for the game, and it isn't actually the game. The game itself was never preserved by the Wayback Machine, however the other SWF file URLs were found and they read as follows: Toenails SWF, Paint the Lines SWF, and Deface Painting SWF. But still to this day, the full game is completely lost, and I think that's for the good. The very first iPhone was announced by Steve Jobs on January 9, 2007 and fully released in the US on June 29, 2007. A little over a year later, on July 10, 2008, Apple released something called the App Store, a marketplace for mobile apps, initially only having just 500 apps, but over time added more and more apps. On April 20th, 2009, a company named Sitka Lowsoft released a game onto the App Store named Baby Shaker for 99 cents. The description of the game read, "On the plane, on the bus, in the theater, babies are everywhere you don't want them to be. They are always distracting you from preparing for that big presentation at work with their incessant crying. Before Baby Shaker, there's nothing you could do about it. See how long you can endure his or her adorable cries before you just have to find a way to quiet the baby down." The whole objective of the game is to quote-unquote quiet the baby by shaking your phone until 2 red X's appear on the baby's eyes. Not long after the game was released, a website called Craps released an article on the game, gaining the attention of Jennifer Dickens, the communications director for the Sarah Jane Brain Foundation, a foundation about preventing brain injury in childhood, tweeted about the game, bringing more attention to it. Rightfully so, tons of people and multiple organizations complained about the app and claims the app was making fun and glorifying shaken baby syndrome, even being released during Shaken Baby Syndrome Awareness Week and National Child Abuse Prevention Month. A day after the game was released, Apple would take down the game from the App Store, but for some reason would bring back the game the next day before taking down the game again for good. Shortly after the game was taken down, Apple released a statement about the game saying, "This application was deeply offensive and should not have been approved for distribution on the App Store. When we learned of this mistake, the app was removed immediately. We sincerely apologize for this mistake and thank our customers for bringing this to our attention." On the official website for Sitka Lowsoft, a statement was released saying, "Yes, the Baby Shaker iPhone app was a bad idea. You should never shake a baby, even on an Apple iPhone baby shaking application. In case you're unaware, Baby Shaker was an Apple iPhone application that was greatly lacking in taste. It was approved by Apple for download upon the iPhone. However, it was later taken down because it was a baby shaking video game. While GTA is a video game that pushes the limits, it is still yet to have a baby shaking minigame in it." Apple was able to move on, unlike Sitka Lowsoft, who seemed to have gone quiet about further production on any games, and the website even at one point turned into a fashion website, but closed altogether at some point. It's extremely unlikely that the game will ever be found, considering that the game is on sale for only 2 days on the very first iPhone back in 2009. But who knows, maybe someone has the first iPhone with the game on it still and can share it to the world. It's very unlikely, but who knows. In 2014, a developer named Yandere Dev, real name Alex Mahan, began work on an indie game called the Yandere Simulator. The game follows a high school girl named Yandere-chan who is lovesick and obsessed with a boy named Senpai, or Tara Yamada, even going as far as eliminating anyone who is attracted to him. The game has garnered a lot of attention since announcement of development on the game. However, it has also sparked a lot of controversy, especially the developer. I won't get into all of that because it's very lengthy and other people have already made videos about it, but just know, despite the game starting production in 2014, the full game hasn't been released yet, only having a demo release in 2020. In early 2024, the developer Yandere Dev was exposed for having an inappropriate relationship with a minor, even admitting to having inappropriate conversations with the minor. For reference, the victim was 16 and Yandere Dev is currently 36. However, this entry isn't talking about Yandere Simulator, but another game that was a competitor and inspiration for the game called Love Letter: My True Feelings. In July of 2020, the developer Dr. Apis announced the game originally under the name Lovesick, followed by a trailer for the game. The trailer garnered a lot of attention for the game, however, Yandere Dev complained that the trailer used most of Yandere Simulator's assets and characters. Eventually, Dr. Apis announced that the game would replace all of the Yandere Simulator assets and characters with original models, and the name would be renamed to Love Letter: My True Feelings. Dr. Apis soon uploaded gameplay footage along with progress reports for the game until tragedy struck. Just a month after the game was announced, allegations came out about the game and most notably, the creator. There are too many allegations to talk about in this video, so I'll talk about the major allegations. The volunteer manager for the team was accused by other team members, who were young women, of sexual harassment during group calls, and after 2 days of working, was fired. However, Dr. Apis privately asked team members on whether this person should be reinstated into the team, knowing full well what they did. Rightfully so, the team members spoke out about this on the official Discord server, and after this, Dr. Apis made the final decision to not add the sexual predator back onto the team. However, Dr. Apis would assign a new person to the volunteer manager position who was 16, even though the game would fall into the rating M category for its violence. This new volunteer manager would prove to not fit for the role, like for example, spreading lies and misinformation to team members on purpose, contributing to NSFW conversations with adults on the official Discord server, and more. There are many instances of the team being abusive, such as when a 16-year-old made a video criticizing the game, leading to the team dislike bombing the video and informing others to do so. This isn't even the worst of them all. The worst of them all were claims that Dr. Apis groomed and sexually harassed a 10-year-old, followed with a 45-page document going into detail about this. On September 23, 2020, the official YouTube channel for the game announced the cancellation of the game, claiming the reason why it was cancelled was because of the team's mental health declining. No builds of the game or any demos were released until 4 years later in November of 2024, when Dr. Apis gave one of his friends a beta test build of the game, but wasn't fully leaked until February 14, 2025. The last game we'll be talking about is something I've already covered in a previous video. If you haven't seen it, please check it out for a more in-depth dive into this game. On May 23, 2014, a man named Elliot Rodger committed a mass killing in Isla Vista, California. Elliot Rodger killed 7 people, 3 by stabbing and 4 by shooting, before committing suicide during a police chase. The case became widely popular because Elliot Rodger posted YouTube videos talking about his struggles with women, and just before his killing, released his manifesto onto YouTube before being taken down. On May 28, 2014, just 5 days after the killing, a user of the Something Awful forums named Dasarschloch. The user posted a link to a trailer for a game called Elliot Rodger Retribution, the video game. The trailer received mixed feedback from people, saying the game had MS Paint graphics and it glorified a mass killer. Other than some 4chan posts made in a YouTube video talking about the game fell to obscurity and became forgotten for 11 years. At some point this year, a Lost Media Wiki user created a page for the game after discovering a Reddit post where OP talked about gameplay footage of the game they saw on TikTok by an Elliot Rodger fan page account. Again, I made a video about discovering this game, so I highly recommend you watch it, but to keep it short, I discovered the game thanks to a random 4chan post briefly mentioning the name of the creator. And that concludes the 10 lost video games list. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and learned something new from it. I most certainly did when doing research for this video. Please like the video and subscribe to my channel if you guys want more content like this. And I'll see you guys in the next video.